and you're setting the outputs, you can't really run the time of day tools in Synergy. So what we want to do then on the generator is set this thing to use weather-based performance. So now with weather-based performance, it's going to use the irradiance profile. And then when I do the single day analysis, PV generation, see now in the morning I'm at 0, where I should be, and it's picking up the generator I just put in, and then there's another one somewhere. So the goal here is to use weather-based performance. And we still have tools, even if they're all set to weather-based. You can go in and you can manually make the irradiance half a sun or a quarter or something. You can manually override that and set the irradiance level for your system at different levels. So you can still control the outputs. There's still model options where you can turn all the generators off. You can still scale it. Yesterday you all saw me using the scale manager. With the little sliders, I was adjusting the generator outputs. So all that is there. And so really we're trying to say there's no reason why you can't run weather-based performance. And really you should run it that way, so you can take advantage of the tools we have in Synergy. There may be a case where you wouldn't, is if you are using Solver or some of the automation tools in Synergy, where you're churning data through Synergy. So you've got a big table, a list of generation values, and you're pulling those exact values into Synergy, running load flows, and taking the results out. So you've got an automated 8760, those kinds of things that you've built for yourself. Then with Python or Solver, in those cases, you want the output of the generator to be exactly what you said. So that may be one example where. But for us planners, that type of thing, then we want to use weather-based performance. Okay, so that's, that kind of analysis is the one area where you're going to be doing generator modeling. I had the standalone generator here. These are rooftop units. So you can see the little solar sign here. You need to update your slide, Carl, because you had that bullseye in there. And you can, in the model settings, you can change the symbol for PV. So we've got this little solar panel in there. And that's going to show up on the distributed generation tab here. And then my type is residential solar. The inverters here, we've got volt bar, volt watt. We've got cutoffs for voltage, and we're ready to put in more types of models in the inverters. It's a big deal for probably all of you. Trying to figure out how to model the requirements that are in place, or trying to figure out what the requirements should be, what the impacts are. And so we've got a good inverter model in there, but it needs to get better. It's going to be an ongoing effort. The review status is not being used now, but we'll get this hooked up soon. And so you can have a PV generator, and you can see in the back constructed, under construction, under review, those kinds of categories. And what we're going to have is options in the model settings that said maybe turn off anything under review. So it gives you a convenient way just to shut off all those generators and look at your system in different conditions. The DERP here, this is a distributed energy resource plan. And so the data is in here now for your use. And so the net metering is a category where, like I was saying when talking about load allocation this morning, we're going to have to go in and try to help distinguish what the load is, what the PD is. So the NIM code is going to help us with that. And there's other categories in here. Some of these I know nothing about, but the field is there. You can set it up and then help us explore what we need to do with that. Okay, so the ratings are here, and this is especially on sections. You just want to override it. put the ratings right here on the section. So there's that kind. Then the third place is on large customers like this. So I've got an auto transfer. I'll talk about switching in a session tomorrow, I think. You know, we've got applications that look at these auto transfer schemes, you know, where you can have, if you have a loss of voltage, you can throw the customer back and forth. A lot of applications that deal with that, reliability uses it. But how does DER, you know, what's the impact of DER on that, on the strategy and so on? We haven't done that yet. But this large customer, he's got a load, he's got some generation here. And so it's the same settings, looks very familiar, and this would be a rooftop. In fact, that's what it's called, large rooftop solar is the warehouse type that I used. The values are there. Notice the kVA rating. So that's going to be the AC rating, the inverter rating, and then we've got the DC rating, which is this rated kW up here. I don't know if we want to get into all that, but it's we rate the inverter as a percentage of the DC rating, and this tells you how much room you have for VAR production. So if you've got a volt VAR controller on your inverter, if this thing is running at full output, and my inverter kVA is 100%, I can't get any VAR output. There's no room. It's running at full capacity. But if my inverter is rated above my DC rating like this, 120%, I can have full output of my PV generator and I still have 20% for VAR production. And so that's pretty crucial for the volt VAR controllers and those things. We've had a lot of discussion about this, about how should we represent this. I think as a percentage of kW, it just makes the data simpler. And so that's why we do it that way. All right, so yesterday, let's go at this thing from kind of the most important thing back. On the DER tab, I'm just going to grab this feeder and substation. Oh, I'm sorry, let's do this. I'm going to come in here and do this. Current time point. So we're running on a weekday in July, 11 o'clock in the morning. Turn off my report here. I'm going to run this. And now that application ran, and I'm going to color the map by the maximum generation. And got some gray areas here. I'm not exactly sure what's up with that. We've got a setting in there. I don't want to fiddle around with settings too much in front of all you. Let's do that. Hopefully that was it. Yeah, that's better. So what we've got here on the map is these sections are colored by their hosting capacity. And so the red sections, very few of them, and that's why this is an example of why these pie charts are great, because I can see this is about 8.5 to 10 megawatts, very few sections, pretty thin slice. This gray area is here because to make this run faster, if we've got a single phase lateral, we just do the first section of that, and we don't do all the way down the lateral, because sometimes they're super long, and at the time, I was just thinking, well, we should just be able to take that value and just use it for the whole lateral. But since then, we've been told that we need to do the whole lateral. So this gray stuff's going to disappear, and we'll do all the single phase stuff. But so that's why it's there. You can see here, 1.8 to 250 kW is this blue piece right here, which is a pretty good chunk. And so if we look at our model, is the screen getting glare on it, you guys? Is it? I don't think they have drapes in it. It's nice to see outdoors, though. It's beautiful. You guys let me know. it's tough as a judgment caller, you know, weighing the benefits of the beautiful scene out here versus the blinding glare on the screen.
Larry, will the inclusion of all the laterals in this, will that be a selectable option?
If it runs super fast, because at the time, I was saying earlier how many it took hours and hours to do this, but now it's running quick. If we don't see much of a time impact, we'll probably just do everything all the time. But if it does slow it down, we'll probably make it an option.
I would suggest making it an option because
okay.
I'm sure for hosting, there's going to be more and more filters going to be trying to apply for this hosting capacity, right? Not just voltage,
right?
Steady state voltage rise, but fluctuation and phase imbalance.
Yes.
Who knows whatever. How many other things?
Yeah.
And that's what I was thinking of. How do you determine the hosting capacity? Is it just voltage rise?
No, let's talk about that. So what we're coloring the map by right here, this is going to be the overall maximum amount to put on any section in the model. And so we're trying to get the whole model analyzed, and then this is going to be the type of thing that you would push out onto maps. You know, for your folks, we have clients that push these onto maps that are externally available. If you go to a website or things like that, you can see these maps. If you're a developer, it kind of gives you an idea of where you might think about developing PV and where there may be bottlenecks and you want to get into it. So that's the idea is let's try to figure out what the hosting capacity throughout the substation. I want to point out we're dealing with all these feeders, right? We're dealing, so it's a whole, as much as you've got selected in Synergy is going to run, we're handling the substation transformer here. The low tap changers are operating, the switch capacitors, regulators, all that stuff is operating. And we're ready to start taking on more challenges. So one thing that, and you folks are probably here, I can't remember exactly who I was talking to about it. If you've got switchable sections, there are company policies that you're never going to have more generation than you have load on a switchable section. So if you could imagine you've got a transfer scheme and you've got maybe some generation over here, and the transfer scheme for some reason would transfer this generator to a section over here that has little load. If that transfer results in the generation exceeding the load, you don't want the generation to be that high. So now we've got to incorporate that into hosting capacity where we're not just looking at the state of the model now, but we're starting to look at switching options and what the configuration can be. So that ties into all these things that we've got on the capacity ribbon over here for contingency analysis, the switching tools, all that kind of stuff is going to come into play here. So saying is we're ready to continue on with this. It's a progression that'll probably never end of looking at all these kind of things. So where do the numbers come from? If I go into the result sets and look at something like here is the maximum generation in megawatts due to voltage. And so this is the same type of chart, but I only want to look at voltage constraints. So the four things we look at today are high voltage, we look at thermal limits, so it'd be loading limits on anything in the system. Delta voltage, which is going to be flicker, and that's going to be the voltage immediately with and without the generator. And then the third one is reverse power flow at the source. So if you've seen these lists before, there's one that we're not doing yet, and that's going to be the desensitization of ground relays. And we're going to get that in. We've been talking to clients about that, and we do the fault analysis. We've got everything there. We just need to do it. So that's going to come, and I'm sure other things are coming along. On the thermal limits, all of that stuff is going to come from these model options here. And so it's up to you. If you don't want fuses to be a part of your hosting capacity limits on the thermal side, you can change these levels here, or you can just uncheck it. And so then fuses are going to be ignored, and so on. So it's these values, and we try the stuff in these settings, these first maybe 5 tabs here, are kind of critical for everything. We're trying to use this stuff. You know, this is used in contingency, load flow, hosting capacity, all kinds of applications. We're trying to use the same set of settings for all of that. And so this is where you would go. And hopefully it's intuitive to come in here and make the changes at this point. So this is, you know, I've got incremental here and I have it set to model the whole system. So that's what this is right here. I think tomorrow when I get into automation stuff, this could be automated so that it runs your whole database every hour for a whole year. And you're going to get a database that's going to have every single section listed in it, every day type. So every month you have 12 months, every day type, and 24 hours a day. It'll be in a big database. And so it's not something you want to be, it's not for us to use as people. Now you've got other systems that can tie into that, produce data, do charting, and you know, we saw plenty of dashboards yesterday. That kind of stuff can be pulled out of that database. And but let's go into this one, which is one that I like a lot, the section hourly profile. So what this is